There's no question about it, McDonald's is the most successful restaurant in the history of the world. The company isn't worth millions, but billions, nearly 150 billion, and that number keeps climbing every day. Back in the 1950s, the man who would eventually turn McDonald's into an international powerhouse, Ray Kroc, had a lot of big ideas for the restaurant, but perhaps...
some people say that Ray Kroc actually stole the ideas from McDonald's. So if you haven't seen the movie The Founder, which tells the story about how McDonald's was started, it's very good movie.
Perhaps his biggest idea can be summed up in a single word.
Franchise. Franchise, franchise, franchise.
That's
franchise.
The movie.
The food at McDonald's has always sold like hotcakes, but once the restaurant started franchising, the world began eating up the brand. So it's not surprising that for decades, entrepreneurs have been flocking to the Golden Arches with dreams of opening their own McDonald's.
Yeah, so I'm really curious once they start diving in about how much McDonald's franchise owners actually make. But, it's true, there are tons of businesses where, they stay small and maybe they have a couple locations, but all of a sudden they start franchising. That adds fuel to the fire. The crazy thing is when most people think of franchising, they think of McDonald's or KFC or Burger King or all sorts of food brands. But that realistically, it's not accessible to most people like you and I. They cost millions of dollars a year to get open. Good luck trying to get into the McDonald's franchise system now. There's actually over 4,000 different franchise brands, and most of them are like service brands or non-food. Food's actually one of the lowest profit margin businesses that you can get into, but let's see what they say. I'm curious how much they're going to say about how much these owners really make. This is my first time watching the video, so the reaction will be genuine.
But being a franchise owner isn't as easy or profitable as you might think. For starters, buying into a McDonald's franchise is expensive, and if prospective franchisees want to get a piece of the pie, they'll have to bring some heavy coin to the table. According to Business Insider, the initial investment is between $1 million and $2.2 million. That price tag...
So that's pretty significant, guys. $1.1 to $2.2 million. I think these days it's closer to the $2 million range. And think about it. Most people who are going to be owning a McDonald's, they're not just owning one. They're typically owning multiple of them. And nowadays, it's really not individual owners that are opening most of these locations. They're investment groups. You have these groups of people that are pooling their capital together. And it's just that's a tremendous amount of money. You might be thinking, like, how do people finance it? A lot of the ways that people finance these franchises is through an SBA loan, which is basically like a government-backed loan where you can put somewhere between 10 and 20% down and then finance the rest of it. I've made a whole bunch of videos on SBA lending and how it works. Actually, maybe we'll put a card or a link to something above for one of our SBA loan videos in case you want to check that out and find out how they work.
Tag is pretty broad, but McDonald's notes that these costs are based on the restaurant's location and size. Long story short, it's going to cost a lot more to buy a McDonald's franchise in San Francisco than it is in Saginaw, Michigan. Before you take the plunge with Mickey D's and start your own franchise, keep in mind that 40% of that initial investment must be cash or non-borrowed assets, whether it's McDonald's or other fast food restaurants.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so that's specific to McDonald's. A lot of franchises, like your average franchise, like when we work with clients, we help hundreds and hundreds of people buy franchises now, and typically they're putting 10 or 20% down for an SBA loan, but it makes sense that McDonald's requires 40% down, and that's something specific to them. Again, they're dealing with people that have a lot of capital and financial resources.
Franchise owners can do pretty well, at least once they get past their initial investment hurdle. According to Business Insider, the average McDonald's restaurant takes in around $2.7 million a year in sales. That may not be quite as high as other well-known eateries.
And I know what everyone's thinking right now. Sales is not profit. Everyone says that. I make these shorts talking about how much different franchises make. And oh my goodness, people just rip us to shreds in the comments just talking about how sales is not profit. No shit. That is why I said sales and why I did not say profit. And guess what? If they disclose their profit and was easy for us to know, we would share the profit numbers. But let's see if they dive into profit and where this goes. If not, I have some comments around it in a little bit, but let's see what they say.
Such as Chick-fil-A or Panera Bread, but it's still pretty good. Of course, some McDonald's franchise owners are going to make more.
Oh, by the way, yeah, Chick-fil-A, I believe their average, I think it's like 7 million Average Chick-fil-A sales. Let's see. It says in 2023, the average Chick-fil-A did over $9 million in sales, which is crazy. They are by far the highest average restaurant, or what you would call QSR, quick service restaurant, by a mile. The crazy thing is they're only open 6 days a week. It's just absurd, really.
More than others, but most franchisees pull in an estimated yearly profit of roughly $150,000. However, after $2.7 million in sales, a profit of $150,000 isn't even 6%. Once you deduct the price of supplies, food, payroll, and about a dozen other costs handed down by the corporation, that's what an average franchise owner is left with. The franchise system has been
I don't know where they're getting that data from, so I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but 6% is not, I'm not surprised by that. Most people don't realize, well, you guys probably don't realize that profit margin for food businesses are really, really, really low. It's actually one of the worst businesses to get into from a cash flow perspective, and why it really doesn't ever make sense to own just one. And that's why you'll hear of people that own 5, 10, 15, 20 of these things, because really in order to produce any sort of significant income, that's what you need, and not to become glued to it, right? If you have a McDonald's and you have a manager and the manager leaves, who's going to run the store? Who's going to run the location? The other thing is that the term profit, not to get too nerdy here or complicated, profit typically does not include your debt service, meaning your loan payments. So you could be making $150,000 a year in profit, right? But then if your loan payments are, let's say, $5,000 a month, which they would be a lot more than that to open up a McDonald's, then that's $60,000 a year. So that means your cash flow is actually only $90,000. So your profit could be $150,000, but that's still not subtracting the cost of your loan. So if you calculate that in, then it's only making, 80, 90 grand after making the debt payments. You can't pull all that money out. You got to leave probably 20, 30, 40 of that in the business account just for the cash flow turnover. You're only pulling, $50,000 a year. You can see why people would need to own 5, 10, 15, of these locations. Again, I'm not sure that their number is 100% accurate. I can definitely tell you that the 6% is not surprising for food businesses, which is wild. And by the way, there are many other franchises that you can open up for less money. I mean, we have clients that open up franchises that are 250 grand or less, or 300 grand to get open, where it shows like the average sales of over $1 million. And some of these franchises disclose profit margins of 25, 30%. So basically, for the cost of $250,000, $300,000 in startup costs, you're making more than you would make in a McDonald's. And it's super scalable as well. You can keep scaling your team as you grow. By the way, if you want to get access to a list of franchises, I put together a whole PDF on 5 low-cost franchises that all make $1 million or more in sales. And there are 1 or 2 of them where we dive into profit margins because the franchise disclosed that. So if you want to get that, click the link below. There will be a link below that will lead you to the page where you can access that PDF, and there's a whole video breakdown of it for free.
Major reason for Ronald and his company to celebrate since the 1950s, and it's actually how McDonald's makes a significant portion of its profit. Plus, franchise owners have historically brought a lot more than money to the table by contributing some of the company's most important innovations.
The Big Mac, the Filet-O-Fish.
Cool. So I'm not going to go through the rest of the video because we got the numbers that we want. But yeah, what a lot of people don't even know about McDonald's is that they're one of the largest owners of real estate, I think, behind the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is number 1 in owning the most amount of real estate, or the largest real estate holder. And so what they actually do, they often buy the land and then they rent it back to franchisees. So they're making a significant amount of their money off of being the landlord, in addition to the royalties that they're paying. I'm sure they get kickbacks from some of the suppliers and manufacturing, producing their own food, so on and so forth. So look, at the end of the day, of course, McDonald's is globally recognized as one of the biggest brands. And one may assume, hey, if you own a McDonald's, you're just raking it in. But it's not necessarily true, guys. A lot of these food franchises, they really do not produce a lot of profit. And there's way better opportunities out there that are lower cost, that deliver better results, that are more accessible for the average person like you and I. So if you want to watch a video where I break down some of these high producing opportunities, then right here is a video I made on 7 businesses that make load of money, and you can take a look at some of these opportunities that produce way more sales and that have lower startup cost. I'll see you there.